you know, they've taken away premeditation. I can't get my head around why somebody would do this, but there are some disturbing aspects of the story. Particularly, we now know about the Chick-fil-A incident where he was there 5 minutes before getting to work.
Yes, Dr. Drew, I believe cops know a whole lot more than they are saying. Remember, one of the police officers sort of at the beginning of this case said, I've been in law enforcement 34 years, and what I know about this case shocks my conscience as a police officer, as a father and a grandfather. What shocks his conscience so much? It would appear not an accidental death. It appears that it's more than that. And then we have all these details going to the surface in dribs and drabs. So we know they're holding him without bond. Why are they holding without bond? That's not what you do to somebody who has been in an accidental tragedy.
It's a great point. It's a great point, yes.
Yeah.
Tell me more. What else?
Well, I mean, if you look at what we learned today, we learned that he took his child to the Chick-fil-A, and he took the child from the Chick-fil-A into the car. That's what it says in the criminal warrant. So he had to strap the little boy in facing the back seat. And then he drives a very short distance to work. And in that process, he forgets the child is there. And then he leaves work at lunch, goes back to the car. He doesn't smell anything. Now, Dr. Lawrence Kobylinski, the famed forensic scientist, told us the child was likely dead by that time because he might only last an hour in that intense heat of up to 130 degrees.
No doubt.
There would be decomposition. So wouldn't he smell something? Now, cynics on my panel said they believe that he might have gone there to check and see whether the child was in fact deceased.
But that's diabolical. I don't see diabolical here, but Evie, maybe you do. You tell me.
Look, I have to say this. I do agree with Jane with regards to what she's saying. This is the thing, Dr. Drew. You don't want to believe this because this is horrible. If this is true and he did this intentionally, then we're looking at something on a completely different level. However, I agree with Jane in that the fact that if law enforcement is keeping him without bail, that there is a reason. We don't know everything. We are not privy to everything, but they have to have good, legitimate reason to keep a father who just lost his son, all right, and then put him out there as the #1 suspect. They wouldn't do that unless they had something pretty substantial.
Let me ask this, Evie, is it possible they're holding him because he's on suicide watch? I mean, maybe they're holding him for his own safety. Is that possible? Anybody?
Not under this, not
no.
like this.
Jane, no?
You would put him in a mental institution or something like that.
But maybe he's in a jail mental ward or something. I mean, there are those sorts of observation units associated with incarceration. Jane, no?
Look, I don't want to convict this man. He deserves his day in court. And the authorities during their news conference said today, we don't want to go into the details of the case because we don't want to create a situation where he's unable to get a fair trial. So they are really shutting down the information. But the fact is, a lot of it just doesn't make sense. Your own Facebook person just wrote, hey, if he thought he left his kid at daycare, why didn't he go to the daycare when he left work thinking, I left the kid at daycare? It doesn't add up. There were inconsistencies in his story from the get-go.
I know,
the first responders said that.
That's what's disturbing. Sam, I'm overwhelmed by this case.
I know it's hard to wrap your head around. I know how anybody could be that vicious. But Dr. Drew, I think what would be really telling is when we hear what his colleagues have to say about Justin Harris. How was he acting that day? Was he agitated? Was he acting normal? I think what they have to say will be really insightful to his frame of mind.
I agree. And then the wife's going to tell us what kind of father he was, what their relationship was like. Erica, I hope you're having the same trouble I'm having getting your head around this.
No, of course, we all want to think that we will go to the ends of the earth to protect our children. But of course, there are bad seeds or mental illness or whatever it is, and we just don't know yet. I completely agree with everyone on the panel that a lot of things don't make sense and they're not adding up. But I think that when the evidence comes out and he gets a thorough psychoevaluation and you get in all the input of the wife and the mother,
you're being so reasonable, Erica. And Evie too, reasonable. This is a highly emotional story and a highly emotional case.